Let's return now to the political discussion of the day. I'm joined by former Liberal MP Fiona Scott and former Greens advisor now with DPG Advisory, Ben Oquist. Great to see you both. Fiona, this budget situation, $50 billion improvement on the last financial year, but still expectation management in a big way from the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, ahead of his first budget next month.
Yeah, look, Kieran, it's good news that it's $50 billion ahead, but there's still a budget deficit there to deal with. And the other significant factor here is that there is a cost of living crisis in Australia with, a range of issues that are foreign and, droughts and natural disasters and various other things. We've got the Reserve Bank continually pushing up interest rates and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, I have to say I do agree with what Jim Chalmers said today about looking at a budget, changing around the budget dynamics as to where things are being spent and how it's being blown out in, aged care and the NDIS and health and defence, those four areas. I think we do have to look at that structural piece around the budget, because even having $30 billion still as a deficit every year, I mean, that's something that it's adding to the interest rate that we're having to pay. So, look, I think $50 billion is a good thing. We do have to give credit to the previous government for a lot of the work to have it in that position, but it's still a long way forward in what it's going to mean for a lot of Australians who are struggling with the cost of living pressures that are out there at the moment.
Ben Oquist, Fiona makes a good point there with Jim Chalmers and that conversation that he says that we need to have about the structural issues with the budget in the medium to longer term. And just reminding our viewers as well, he's a former Chief of Staff to a Treasurer, Wayne Swan, and he knows the need to try and till the soil if you're going to try and make big changes, something that the Rudd government didn't do, for example, with its mining tax years ago.
Yeah, two things here. You're right. Australia has an underlying revenue problem. We're not collecting enough revenue for a modern dynamic economy where we need the money for infrastructure, where we need the money for services, quality services, whether it's childcare, education, disability services, government support for modern industry policy, infrastructure. So we need more revenue in Australia, and Australia, by international standards, has a lot less government revenue. We're well behind the OECD average by some estimates. Simply, if Australia had the OECD average of revenue, would be $120 billion more in the government coffers. So I think that revenue debate is coming, and the Treasurer is rightly tilling the soils there. And secondly, while there was good news there on the revenue front in the short term, I've just come back from a little bit of time in Europe and a bit tuned into the global economic debate, and worrying signs everywhere. Maybe the US already in recession, Europe likely heading for a recession, inflation out of control in most places. In Australia, we've got the housing market coming off. There are really worrying signs on the economy. So while a little bit of good news there on the revenue, I guess I was more interested in this big picture worry that is going on globally with inflation and potential recessions. And I think there's some big budget challenges coming for the Treasurer, and he's right to till the soil for Australia to address our revenue challenge and problem.
And he's got a budget October, one in May, so in quick turnaround, a couple of budgets for his start in the role as Treasurer. Let's look at the big story of the last couple of weeks, Her Majesty the Queen and her funeral yesterday, her farewell. It has been an incredible period of mourning and a show of respect, I think, certainly in the UK, but here as well, Fiona Scott. Do you think the Prime Minister's got his own response right to all of that?
Yes and no. I mean, personally, I don't think he should have cancelled Parliament last week. I think they should have had all of their condolence motions and things like that done then and there. I think by Thursday, I mean, it's probably dragged on a little bit too much, being that the British are back to normal as of tomorrow, so today, our time sort of thing. So look, I think maybe not there, but everything else, yes, absolutely. I think he's done really well there. And I mean, I think he's also been correct insofar as, watering down the Republic monarchy debate. I mean, when you look at the Roy Morgan poll today, that, even amongst Green voters, which is, 30% of Green voters even support the monarchy, 20% increase in Labor voters becoming more positive towards the monarchy in Australia. I mean, I think if Anthony Albanese tried to bring on the Republic debate now, I think he would lose a lot of political capital. And you've got to think, look at all the pageantry here and the pride of the military. I mean, I read somewhere that 5 of the gentlemen who carried the casket were, called back from Iraq to be able to do that. I mean, to show off your military in that space. And over the next couple of years, you're going to have the coronation, you're going to have the Prince and Princess of Wales to be invested into that position, and we'll also see the first tours of the Prince and Princess of Wales here in Australia, and of course the King and Queen consort. So, I mean, trying to throw a Republic debate in that on top of it, I think would be politically courageous for Anthony Albanese, and I think he's actually been right to call on, let's stay focused on the voice to Parliament, let's stay focused on Indigenous recognition, because I think if you tried to throw the two together, you'd probably lose both of them. So, look, I think overall I give Anthony Albanese pretty good marks for the way he's handled this last fortnight.
Ben Oquist, what's your take? He certainly copped a bit of flack on either edge of the debate, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a bit damned if he did, damned if he didn't, isn't it? If he doesn't do more. It's criticised by those who think this is the opportunity to pursue the Republic. And we did hear for a long time that it wouldn't be until the Queen passed that we'd be able to have the Republic debate in Australia. So, but I think overall he did it right. But I don't think it's wrong to kind of question the kind of over-the-top response, the cancelling of Parliament. You can still be respectful for the Queen and think this is all getting a bit out of hand, both here and overseas. It's not... Yes... everybody's interested in what's happened and the pageantry and the carry-on, but there's also a bit of an uneasy feeling that this is all a bit much for hereditary, kind of largely undemocratic system, and we'll see how that plays in the longer term, whether Australians kind of think a bit harder about our system of government that allows a really undemocratic system and hereditary privilege to kind of rule over us and to have a head of state not from Australia, and we'll see how that plays over time. Having said that, it's a new king, and let's see he performs too. I noted today that the Prime Minister said he's not against King Charles having forthright views on climate change and still expressing them. He's been backed by US President Joe Biden in that view too. Maybe that will enliven interest in King Charles, so we'll see. But whether it's this week or next week or the week after, Australia has to have a debate about the Republic. We live in a modern society, and I think the royal system's going to look out of date here, as in many places around the world, so that debate's coming as well.
Only got a minute left, Fiona, but if I could get your quick thoughts, both of you, on next week, Parliament back, and ICAC, the federal corruption body, looks like it'll be the big one next week, Fiona.
Yeah, look, it does look like it's going to be a big one. And look, like last week when we were talking, Kieran, I just really hope that Labor get this right. I hope they actually, if they're going to bring it in, it's an election promise. They were supposed to even come in under the former government. But look, let's hope the legislation is right and they don't rush it too fast, that we end up with something that, doesn't make more trouble than what it solves.
Ben Oquist?
Yeah, it's good. Its time has come. Congratulations to Bill Shorten for putting it on the agenda in the first place, and the previous government promised to do it and didn't do it, and we're here now. I think the debate over it being delayed is a bit confected, whether it's introduced last week or this week, or whether it gets passed by December or February. It's going to get done. The Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, has been consulting. I'm looking forward to the bill introduced. It's good for Australian democracy.
Ben Oquist, Fiona Scott, great to see you both. We'll see you next week during that sitting.